If someone rejects us or criticizes us in general and claims that we're either arrogant, stuck up, full of it, or they claim we're just out for money, fame, or to put others down, or that we have an axe to grind, you have to wonder now, at least in my mind, whether there's more than meets the eye here. For instance, we're all flawed, but the question then is, maybe those who are doing a lot of criticizing are kind of like the backseat driver in a car who criticizes the person who's driving up front. Theodore Roosevelt talked about this, by the way, of those who are the courageous ones who get in the arena and fight, versus those in the peanut gallery, I suppose you could say, making comments about those in the arena. Now, what would make people not want to go in the arena? And what is perhaps the driving force behind all of this criticism? Maybe that despite the flaws, sometimes considerable, in certain people being criticized for their flaws, that at least they're not what I call moribund. And by moribund, I mean that at least they have a certain degree of functioning that brings them some kind of happiness. And that beyond keeping out of trouble with the law, as per being arrested, or losing jobs right and left also. It could be, well, that the criticizer making the comments that I just alluded to has trouble with their overall level of efficiency. Maybe they're called obsessive compulsive, and they get very little done as compared to the person they're criticizing who is supposedly arrogant or has an axe to grind, etc., or is just out for money. Maybe the underlying theme here is that at least those people, whatever flaws, can get off the dime and be quite efficient. Even envy then towards the politicians sometimes, as per flaws the politician has, but at least the politician can do something. They can get out of bed in the morning. They're not depressed, so to speak, bummed out. They're not constantly backbiting other people to the extent they can't function themselves. And again, they're not so perfectionistic, catastrophizing of a sense that they have an efficiency level of, say, 2%. And the moribund person typically may suffer chronic rage or anger, bitterness, constant blame shifting, constant envy, constant fears of gigantic proportions that lock them in place. Frozen rage is a term that comes to mind also with respect to anger. We might even criticize a therapist for being so imperfect, even callous at times, or envious, or incompetent even, but maybe at least the therapist could complete a course of instruction to some degree, or maybe the therapist can at least show up to work. I don't know. Therapists can have lots of issues themselves, which can torpedo therapy. But to criticize someone else for this and that flaw, we consider astronomically serious when we can't do anything in comparison. We're moribund in my mind because we have a level of functioning of maybe 2% due to very egregious defense mechanisms, they call it. Well, then there's a discrepancy here in my mind. Now, psychoanalysis would say, or some therapists would say, there are mature defenses versus immature defenses. And that we all, of course, use defense mechanisms. But are we thus to criticize someone that we're envious of, jealous of a sense, because of their defense mechanisms, which we can see that are more mature, even if we call it being stuck up or arrogant. Maybe at least they can function on some level far better than we can, such that they can do something and make some headway in life, as we call it, other than being plagued with rage, plagued with blame-shifting bitterness, and plagued also with guilt and shame. How can we thus progress in life at all if we basically thus are so out of it that we can only come home at night, sit in front of the television set, open a six-pack, or sleep whenever we want to and can, and point fingers at others who do have flaws, but not to these extent? Those are my thoughts then on this.